So, hello everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us today. So, we have a very exciting topic, and it's about how to create podcasts and why and how they can help your students. So, we have two speakers today. Akmal Akbarov, he's the founder of Invest Study, and as I was telling, so he has been, I think, one of the pioneers of using different web technologies and technology in teaching English in Uzbekistan. And Ulugbek Nurmukhamedov, our old good friend, as you know, and one of the kind of advocates and passionate teachers of mental health, mentors of mental health, right? So he is the lecturer at the Northeastern Illinois University. So yeah, over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nadrupa. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, assalamu alaikum, Uzbekistan. And I know that everybody had to go back to lockdown again. So I hope that, I sincerely hope that until August 1st, the COVID-19 will completely disappear from our region and hopefully from the rest of the world as well. So I wish you guys all the, patience and best, and please extend my greetings and also du'as, as we say in Islam, to your significant others and your relatives. So let's make dua so that the COVID-19 will soon disappear. With that thought in mind, I'm very happy actually to co-present in this webinar with Akmal Akbarov, whom I've known since 2005 or 6, right, Akmal? Right. So, I think there are three things that, that are common or that I really like about Akmal Akbarov. First of all, Akmal and I both were students of Miss Deloram Gaziva, rest her in peace. So that's how I, got to know about Akmal. Actually, I've never met Akmal in Uzbekistan. He emailed me when I was in the US, and that's how we got to know each other. I mean, I used to see him here and there back in Jahan Tilara, but never in person. We talked in Tashkent before I came to the US. So then every time I go back to Uzbekistan, we usually have Osh with Akmal, and that's his treat, so which I really appreciate. And the third thing is that Akmal, as Nadrupa pointed out, is so passionate about the application of technology in language teaching, and I really admire his skills, really. And so, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, Akmal knows that. I mean, probably we planned this 3 months ago or 2 months ago. I was like, Akmal, let's do that. But he's also a very humble guy, but he's done a lot in the area of technology. So that, in case you work for the Ministry of Education in Uzbekistan, or, you are part of the Innovation Center in Uzbekistan, Akmal is your guy. So Akmal, you will pay for me for this advertisement. So anyway, so we decided to talk about podcasts, okay? So in today's webinar, we would like to talk about, define a podcast and talk about advantages of podcasts for language learning, and also, briefly talk about and share some of my research findings on the number of words you and your learners need to know to understand general podcasts. And also, Akmal will guide us through about his podcast project and how he developed his podcast, and how you should develop your podcast, and about related matters. I would like to start the talk with this thing in mind. I mean, for Mentor Hub, technology is not something new. I mean, if you look at the Mentor Hub YouTube channel, right, Nadrupa graciously put together, right, and here I created a short tiny URL. So tinyurl.com/mentorhub videos. I mean, if you look at it, the videos, there were two phenomenal webinars on Google Classroom, right? One was done by Dr. Gulnoza Sabirova. Take a look at it. And also another one by two colleagues from Chicago. And also Nadrupa and her colleague did a webinar on online resources. And Israel did a wonderful webinar on basically online education. So, and with that thing in mind, we thought that it was perfect time for us also to talk about on podcasting, because if you notice, one thing Israel mentioned in his webinar, he briefly mentioned this idea called universal design for learning. I don't know whether you guys have heard this term, universal design for learning. The idea that different learners learn language in a different ways. For example, I might love writing, but my friend, let's say, Dilshad, might like learning English by, let's say, learning vocabulary. Or another friend, let's say Sober, might like to use technology in learning the language. So that's why this is the idea, universal design for learning. And right now, right before the presentation, I was just talking to a colleague, Aziz Afa from Jahan Kundara, who basically said, hey, we might actually incorporate podcasting into our teaching sometime in the fall. You see, like, some people use textbooks, other people use, lecture notes, while others use videos, the others use like flashcards, and while some other teachers might use podcasts. So that's why I think it actually, it goes really well with other types of technology, and it can actually facilitate your language learning. So that's why we decided to talk about podcasting. So, and please, as Nadrapa mentions quite often, her YouTube channel, subscribe to her YouTube channel, and watch her YouTube channel. I mean, come on, on Mentor Homes there are over 1,000 members, and right, Nadrapa, I mean, if one person can like it, I mean, there can be more and more people. Anyway.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for endorsing it. Yes, so we have over 1,000 and we have only about 300 subscribers. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So now, what is a podcast, right? Just in case you've never heard this term, it's basically based on the Macmillan Dictionary. It's a multimedia file, such as a radio program or video that can be downloaded or streamed from the internet onto computer or mobile devices. The method of publishing files that can be used in this way is called podcast, right? So, radio niyam, such a podcast, saboladi ko'pchilik radiolarni podcasti bor, briefly in Uzbek, yoki ba'zi bir eshittirishlar alohida podcast bo'lib chiqadi. Shu podcast. So interesting fact is that over 850,000 active podcasts and over 30 million episodes were so far published. So it's based on Fast Company statistics. So there are lots of podcasts. Briefly in Uzbek, esingizda bo'lsa, O'zbekistonda bo'lganimizda, misol uchun 1998-yilda o'qishga kirgan bo'lsam, 2004-yilgacha bitta native speaker, ikkita native speaker yurardida universitetda. Odatda misol uchun native speakerlarni eshitmas edikda. Va podcastlar bo'lsa, ko'pchiligi o'sha ingliz zabon mamlakatlarda chiqadi, Amerikada, Britaniyada, boshqa joylarda. Shuning uchun ham menimcha podcast juda ham foydali bo'ladi authentic speech eshitishga. So podcasts can be really useful to listen to authentic speech, especially by native speakers or advanced users of English. So here's the thing. So podcasts can come in different genres. So society and culture, business, comedy, news and politics, and health, right? So somebody, when a colleague the other day gave a talk on Ielts speaking, right? I think one of the messages that Nadrapa intended to send was that, hey, if you want to improve your speaking skills, or if you want to improve your speaking score in Ielts, right? You also need to have a world knowledge. Right, you need to be familiar a little bit of what's going on in the area of business, comedy, society, news, politics, health, because you never know what kind of topic you will end up getting in the IELTS speaking test, right? So I think the podcasts also come in different genres. So I think if we expose our students to different types of podcasts, so they will hopefully get some English language input or information. On top of that, some world knowledge, which might really help them in life in general. So podcasts come in different categories. And here's the thing, The Economist, right? It's one of my favorite magazines, right? I remember that when I was in Tashkent student, the British Council used to have free subscription for The Economist, right? We know that it's magazine. The Economist bu jurnal, to'g'rimi? Lekin mana shu jurnalni o'zini podcastlari bor. Ya'ni mana shu jurnalda maqola chiqarilgan maqolalardan o'sha podcast qiladigan odamlar, radio eshittiruvchilar, jurnalistlar foydalanib podcast qilishadi. Misol uchun The Economist Asks, alohida podcast, The Week Ahead, yana alohida podcast. Yana mana bu yerda bittasi bor, menga hozir ko'rinmayapti. Editor's Picks. Odatda nima bo'ladi Editor's Picksda? The Economist jurnalda chiqqan eng sevimli podcastni olishadi-da. Maqolani olishadi-da, o'shani atrofida bitta podcast epizod yaratishadi. or TED Talks, right? We all know TED Talks, right? I mean, I love TED Talks. First of all, it's for free, right? And we know as teachers, free is good, right? And so even TED Talks, for example, we know that TED Talks is a conference, right? And usually it's held annually, sometimes in Canada, sometimes in the US, but also TED Talks has its branch, right, which is called TEDx. And so even TED Talks put together, it's 2 podcasts, okay? So one of them is called TED Talks Daily, and the other one is called TED Radio Hour, which I love. In TED Radio Hour, what happens is that, so for example, the journalist, the podcast creator usually usually takes a look at a couple of presentations from TED Talks and invites the presenters of those presentations and discusses about one idea, for example, education, right? And in TED Radio Hour, usually 5 different speakers who presented in TED Talks will talk about education, from different perspectives. o'sha katta tashkilotlarni, TED Talks, The Economist yoki New York Times yoki NPR, mana bu NPR, National Public Radio. Amerika Qo'shma Shtatlarini nima deydi, radiosi desak ham bo'ladi-da. Shularni juda ham ko'p podkastlari bor. So your job is basically to look for types of podcasts. Akmal, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, and there are also a lot of podcasts for those people who are, learning English as well. So if you want, I can share some of them, and the platform where I, host my own podcasts.
Okay, Akmal, can we get to that a bit later?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so as Akmal was talking about it, on top of, like, for example, this one, right? Usually for general audiences, right? But as Akmal was mentioning, so briefly, he's a bit later he will also talk about the platform where you can find a lot of podcasts designed for language learners, and including his own, that he created his own podcast episode. So he's going to guide us through how he did that. But currently, I just want to show you guys, for example, some of these podcasts can be obtained from like iTunes, right? Or Stitcher.com or Podbeans, one of Akmal's favorite platforms. And why are we talking about podcasts, right? Is it because Akmal created his podcast, or is it because I love listening to podcasts? So I think the podcasts are usually investigated in the area of CALL, which is basically computer-assisted language learning. But within CALL, there is this area called MAL, which is mobile assisted language learning, right? Like you use cell phones or some social media platforms, and doing so you basically learn, pick up the language, right? Foreign language. So we know that podcasts are convenient and portable, right? So because, imagine you have a cell phone, right? Using your cell phone, usually podcasts can be downloaded into your cell phone. And so as long as you have a cell phone and, you have the access to the internet, you should be able to get some podcasts. So they're portable, convenient, and also enable learners, by the way, whether you are in a bus, whether you're in a taxi, whether you're in a metro station, because you've already downloaded these listening audio materials, right? You always have access to these podcasts, and it enables learners to pause, skip, and slow down, right? I mean, one of the things about being a non-native speaker or learner of language is that sometimes the speech is too fast, right? Or sometimes there is a British speaker, American speaker, or speakers from different parts of the world, right? So sometimes you have to skip and pause and slow down, right? So the learners have this opportunity, to'g'rimi? Misol uchun narsa eshitayotganda xohlasangiz to'xtatasiz, orqaga qaytarasiz, oldinga olib borasiz, tez eshitasiz, sekin eshitasiz. Ayniqsa hozirgi telefonlarda sekin eshitadigan feature bor. Juda ham zo'r. Misol uchun TED Talksda ham sekin eshitadigan feature bor. Unaqa bodir qilmaydi, unaqa sizga xalaqit bermaydi. So have positive effects on students' study habits. Again, right, going back to Israel's point, universal design for learning, right? So some students read through books, or some students watch a video and learn information through that, or some students listen to podcasts. And so basically, o'quvchilarga har xil variant beramiz o'rganish uchun. Mashinasi universal design for learning. A podcast ham shunga sabab bo'ladi. Help to reinforce previously learned vocabulary, right? From O'Brien and Hagelheimer study. Improve learners' listening skills because, in podcasts you have to listen, right? Are useful for EFL learners to get very little, second language input out of the classroom, especially in Uzbekistan, right? Again, when I was a student in Uzbekistan, there was only one or two native speakers. One was from so Michael Benson was one of them, and David Byers was one of them from Scotland, right? So not everybody had access to these people. While when you have access to podcasts, you should be able to get lots and lots of language input. Just on a side note, in Uzbek, Diloram ham bir payt aytuvdilar-man. Xullas, ular talaba bo'lishganida endi anaqa native speakerlarni eshitmoqchi bo'lishar ekan dedilar hamda. Eshitmoqchi bo'lishar ekanda, o'shanda hech esimdan chiqmaydi, aytib beruvdilar, BBC-ni eshitishar ekan. BBC-ni eshitganda hamchi kechqurun eshitishar ekanda. Kechqurun BBC-ni eshitishar ekan, maqsadki, чтобы Sovet Ittifoqi paytida hech kim eshitib qolmasin. Chunki agar, hey, mana bu talaba BBC-ni eshityapti kechqurun desa, ular shpion sifatida ko'rilar ekanda. Hopefully. Unfortunately, we don't have this problem. So, in other words, podcast is going to give us lots of expose us to native speaker speech. Now, here's the thing. Again, right? Why podcast? This is a student of mine, Jackie Rasmussen. So, Jackie and I decided to look into teachers' perceptions of podcasts. So, we wanted to know, do teachers use podcasts? If yes, how do they use it? We basically sent a questionnaire to a group of teachers around the world, and we got lots of responses. In fact, 2 or 3 responses from Uzbekistan. And so our question was basically, do language teachers use podcasts? If yes, how? If not, why not? Right? And only 87% of the survey respondents responded to our survey. Out of, I don't know, like 200 or so. So we basically analyzed this data. And here's what happened. So 46 out of 87 respondents said they use podcasts in their classroom, okay? And 41 of the respondents said they didn't use podcasts in their classroom. And we basically wanted to know why. I mean, almost like half of the participants from our pool, said that they didn't use podcasts in their teaching. And we were really curious why they wouldn't use podcasts. And some of the responses included, I don't know how to find suitable podcasts. Right? I cannot find prefabricated materials for using podcasts in the classroom. So podcast borligini bilsam ham, undan qanaqa qilib materiallar qilishni bilmayman, undan qanaqa qilib sinfxonamda ishlatishni bilmayman. So Akmal ham o'zini podkastini yaratdi, ham materiallar yaratdi. Shu bo'yicha xudo xolisa bugun aytib beradi bizga. So, and somebody said there is no place for podcasts in the official curriculum. So, we have to use books, we have to use exercises, we have to use certain X amount of work, and we have to assign this work to students, but we don't have any space left for podcasts. So these are basically some of the responses. And even some of the responses included, hey, my students don't have adequate access to mobile devices. Talabalarında computer yo, talabalarında internet yo, telefon yo, right? So, which is a common problem in many parts of the world, including the United States. So we talked about it. Anyway, so these are some of the reasons. So that's why we are organizing this webinar today. Just in case if you are not using a podcast, how can you use a podcast in your teaching? But also we have to figure out that there are different podcast creators and they have different interests and motivations. Do you remember, like we briefly talked about it, right? The Economist has economy interests, right? Science podcasts, science organizations have their own scientific interests, right? So different podcast creators have different interests. And podcasts also are into different categories. My professor and colleague, Randall Sadler, and I actually did a paper on podcasting where we looked at lots of podcasts. Ko'pchilik podcastlarni qarab chiqdikda, ularni 4 ta kategoriyaga bo'ldik. So we put them into 4 categories based on our holistic opinions, basically. So there were discrete category, ESL focused, general audience, and ESL super. In discrete categories, Grammar Girl is one of them, or like, it's a basically single information type of podcast. They either just do a podcast on grammar or vocabulary. It's usually one skill type of podcast. Another one is an ESL focused podcast, right? So the podcast creators have clear idea in mind, that they want to do a podcast focusing on one particular audience, which is either ESL or EFL. So if you know Rachel's English, if you're interested in pronunciation, probably you've seen Rachel's English. Tulips.com by Canadians. It used to be for free, but now, you know, they're actually charging it. But I love their approach to using podcasts in language teaching. It's very similar to how Akmal created his podcast. And the next one is general audience podcast. So general audience podcast is primarily for native speakers in mind, or for advanced users of English. Mani nazarimda general audience podcast'ı har bitta o'qituvchi eshitishi kerak. Chunki odatda ular endi amerikaliklarga, Britaniya, ya'ni native speakerlarga mo'ljallangan podcastlar. Shuning uchun ham nazarimda har bitta odam eshitishi kerak. O'qituvchi O'zbekistonmi, Amerikami, juda ham yaxshi ko'rib qolasizlar. NPRda juda ham ko'p podcastlar bor, o'zingizlarni qiziqqan sohalar bo'yicha, psychologymi, physicsmi, gender studiesmi, va boshqalar. ESL Super Podcast. So what is an ESL Super Podcast? We know that there is Voice of America, to'g'rimi, Amerika ovozi, and we know that there is BBC. And the funny thing is that these two organizations put together a lot of materials designed for learners of English. Lots and lots of materials. So that's why we decided to call them ESL Super. Now, Akmal is going to guide us through his podcast. And I think, Akmal, you can correct me, I think his podcast is ESL Focused Podcast. Why? Because he created his podcast to facilitate his students' language learning in his center. He put together this podcast because he wanted to help to integrate some of his podcast materials into his own curriculum and syllabus. And he created this podcast with his students in mind. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Akmal. Akmal, marhamat, podcastini bizga gapirib bersang. Thank you so much.
Rahmat. Assalomu alaykum. Hurmatli hamma uchun. Thank you very much for inviting me to the online webinar. And I'm very happy to be here and to talk about my podcast. And if I tell you like why I started and how I started the podcasting, so I can say that about 4 or 5 years ago, I had my own website. It was English Club, EnglishClubPro.com, and it was English language ESL blog. And so mostly it was a text-based blog, and I used to write a lot of materials on how to learn English, how to teach English sometimes, and I also wanted to diversify my content on my blog, and I wanted to create video lessons and video content. But I was always even though that I was a blogger myself, and I had a lot of readers and a lot of followers on my blog, I was this very shy and introvert, kind of a teacher. And for me, it was I was very shy to be publicly open and make a video of myself. And that's why the idea of podcast came from all of these, the process of being shy, because when you creating your video, you have to show yourself, you have to go public. And and many of the teachers, many of the colleagues who I know, we feel shy. So that's why, and I was also this shy, one of the teachers who always feeling, shy and uncomfortable. And that's the reason why I decided to choose podcasting. And, because when you when you do the podcast, the people who will follow you, they will not see you, but they will rather listen to your face. They will listen to your voice and to your message. So, and the creating the podcast for me at that time was very easy. All I have to do was just to take my mobile phone and I remember it was Telegram. If you know, when you using the Telegram app, you can send a voice message to your friends. So all I have to do was just to take my mobile phone and send a voice message to myself. And I listened to that voice message. It was actually those days when Telegram just rolled out this audio sending message feature, and I decided to test it and see the quality of the audio. And then the quality of the audio was really nice. And I said, okay, maybe I should use it for creating my podcast, And after that, I downloaded the audio to my mobile phone, and from my mobile phone to my laptop, and from my laptop, it was when the audio was on my laptop, I decided to to do some formatting and to improve, add some kind of intro music, outro music, and add some background music so that the podcast will look and will sound like a more professional podcast. So everything started from that, so like I had my own blog where I had a lot of text-based content, and I wanted to diversify my content. I wanted to have this video content and audio content, but for the video content, I was not very confident. And to be honest, I didn't want to go I didn't want to go public, because if you want to create a video, you need you need a mobile phone, but at the same time, you have to take care of your background as well. So you have to get prepared for that. You have to prepare your background for the video, and you have to have proper lighting, and and then of course you have to also look more professional. So there's a lot of things. There are many things that you have to do when you want to create a video material. But when it comes to podcasts, all you have to do is just to have a mobile phone and application that can record your voice. That's it. You don't need anything other than that. You don't need advanced technology, or you don't need to do any other extra steps. And then for the students also, it's I think listening to podcasts is more beneficial rather than watching the video content. Why? Because when in order to watch the video content, the students, they have to fully focus on the screen. They have to stop what they're doing, and they should just watch this video content. And usually, depending on the quality of the video and the topic of the video, they can watch it from 5 to 15-20 minutes and not more than that. Because if the video is more than 15 minutes, then my observation shows, and I watch YouTube videos a lot. I don't watch videos which are more than 15 minutes. So video content, it's when the students and when the people watch the video content, it's very difficult to keep them focused and concentrated, and it's very difficult to make them watch the content, because they have to fully focus, and they should stop what they're doing. But when it comes to podcast, this is very good and very comfortable, because they don't have to stop anything. They don't have to, like, for example, when they can listen to podcasts when they're going to school or when they're coming from school, if they are in the traffic jams, so they can, all they have to do is just to put the headphones and listen to the podcast, and they can do it on the go, so they don't have to stop doing something in order to listen to podcasts. So that's the one of the best features and best aspects of listening to podcasts compared to video. And so I'm gonna show you the podcast that I created myself, and the podcast that I created, I created different kinds of podcasts. There are podcasts which lasted 5 minutes, and there are podcasts which lasted even 1 hour. And even those podcasts which lasted 1 hour, they have a very high rate of downloads. Yeah. So if you're ready, now I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you what kind of podcasts I created and how I used them in my lessons, in my teaching, and how you can use them as well in your lessons. 1 minute.
Yeah, we can see the screen. Great.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Kimdir telefoni qattiq ishlayapti-ya. O'shani o'chirib qo'yishlari bormi? Kimdir telefon qilishyapti-da, ziz sanga ham eshitilyaptimi, Akmal?
Yo'q, menga eshitilmayapti.
Eshitilmayaptimi? Okay. Go ahead, Akmal.
Çünkü bu Akmal'nikidan kelyapti. Akmaldan boshqa hech kimning mikrofoni yo'q.
Akmal, o'chirib qo'y telefoningni, iltimos.
Yo'q, men telefonim o'chirmadi lekin.
Ha, o'chirmi? Okay.
Lekin sizdan shunaqa tovush kelyapti.
Ha, yo'q.
Okay.
Sorry. To be honest, this is the first time I'm speaking to so many people, and for me it's a little bit it's a little bit unusual because everybody is silent. Usually, when I have when I teach online lessons that are like 8 to 12 students, and usually there's a lot of discussion, so I feel like I'm talking to myself, so that's why I feel a little bit awkward now. Okay.
Don't worry, time to time I'm going to interrupt you, so don't worry about it. So okay. Now can you tell us how you created and what you did?
Yes. Okay, so basically this is the podcast which I have created. So 1 minute, let me show you. Okay. So one of the podcasts that I have created was this. I had questions, like there were topic, and there were 15 and 10 questions, and all I have to do was to read those questions in a way that in order to help the students to practice their speaking skills at home. 1 minute, I will show you now. For example, here, shopping, yeah? Shopping. So here's the podcast. So students just click here and listen to the audio. And here I put the PDF material. So 1 minute, I will show you. Here. Okay. So you see there are 16 questions about shopping. And so what I did in this podcast was I read all of these questions one by one with some pause in between. Like, for example, what did you buy the last time you went shopping, right? So I read that question and I paused like 10, 15 seconds, giving the another student a chance to answer the question and practice his speaking skills or her speaking skills at home. And then I went to I moved to another question, like, for example, are you going to go shopping after this podcast episode? Yeah. So one by one, I read all of these questions. And after every question, there was a pause in between. So the reason why I created this kind of podcast was because I wanted to give the students this chance to practice speaking skills at home. Usually, most of the students, in Uzbekistan, they cannot practice their speaking skills because, the Uzbekistan is not the English-speaking country. We don't have a lot of native speakers in Uzbekistan, and in the classroom, and not all the students have opportunity to practice speaking skills with the teacher. So this podcast, I wanted to help the students practice their speaking skills at home. So if you want, I can so you see this PDF material. So try to memorize some of the questions. Like, okay, let's see the first question. What did you buy the last time you went shopping? Okay, can you just memorize this question? And a second as well. I'm gonna play the podcast and you will see what I'm talking about. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Akmal Akbarov from Ielts Podcasts. Welcome to session number 23. Today, we're going to talk about shopping. And if you're ready, we have prepared 16 questions for you to practice your speaking skills. So the first question, what did you buy the last time you went shopping? Are you going to go shopping after this podcast episode? How often do you go shopping? Is it better to use cash or plastic cards? Okay, so you see, I mean, nothing like skyrocketing, right? Nothing complicated. So all I have to do was to prepare this PDF material with 16 questions, pick a topic, and put all the materials on the website. And everything is free, and students don't have to sign up or register. They don't have to do anything. So they just go to the website, listen to the podcast, download the material, and practice speaking at home. So this is so by this way, I gave my students a chance to practice their speaking skills at home. And also we had and there were also podcasts where I and my friend Shohrukh Qasimov, we also discussed, we met together and we discussed these questions together, just to give, just to show the students how they can do it, like how they can discuss, like how to answer the questions, what kind of phrases they can use, and like how long they should speak about each and every topic. Okay, so this
can
was
can I add something? So basically, you gave questions, right? You gave a list of questions, and with Shohrukh,
First I gave a list of questions, and then after like 1 week, we met with Shohrukh and we discussed some of the questions. Like we made a demo.
You modeled it, right? You gave a model to students.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and then we also had Ielts podcasts. So in Ielts podcast, what we did, we prepared, we prepared the list of words, academic words, on different topics. For example, here, work and careers. And here, for example, education and schooling. children and families. Yeah. So now I'm going to show you. There's also a PDF material for this. So the difference between this podcast and then the previous podcast is a little bit different. Here, it's a electronic book. Here, you see, it's electronic book, and it comes with like how many words? About 20 words, 20 words and expressions, collocations, and they come with they come with definitions and example sentence. And then here we gave we allowed a space for participants, yeah, for the students to download, and if they want, they can print and write their own example sentences over here. So basically, students and teachers can use it as extra material as well. And so all of these expressions, you know, all of these words, me and my colleague Shohrukh Qasimov, we explained each and every academic word one by one. We gave a definition, we gave example sentences, we discussed, you know. So by this way, we tried to explain these words and teach these students, teach these words to our audience. Yeah, so they learn these words, and when they pass IELTS, they have good results in their IELTS examinations. And this is also so like it was like a so all they have to do is just to click here, play, and everything was there. So if you want, I can play and you can see. But I think there's no need for that. You know, we can share the link in the Mental Hub group, and so it's nothing. This is not a closed content. It's not an exclusive content. It's all open and free, so you can visit and check it at any time. And we also did I also did a lot of interviews with you know, not only with the people who are only English teachers or the people who are in a field of teaching and learning, but you know, I tried to meet with the people who were who I thought would be interesting, and people with, of course, good English, and the people who had a very good message to young people. I met with them, and we also had several interviews. So, and one of the interviews is it was done with Nurmukhamedov, and I think many teachers here they also know about Barno. So we basically talked about how students can get 8 or 9 at speaking, IELTS speaking. So Barno gave advice, and I also shared my own advice as well. So basically, this was so this is such kind of content I tried to create for my audience and put it on the website. Yeah. So basically, this is the this is what we have, what I have been doing so far. And of course, there are, you know, so now if I talk about myself, I just come up with 3 kinds of content for podcasting. The first one was come up with 15, 16 questions on different topics and read them out, and give the students a chance to practice speaking at home. So that was the one form of content. And second form of content was so to find a different kind of to find the words on different kinds of topics for those students who are learning English, who are preparing for IELTS, and explain those words. Yeah. And the third form of content was to run different kinds of interviews with interesting people. Yeah. So 3 kinds of podcasts that I have created so far. So yeah, and so now, if you want, I can tell you like where you can get what kind of technology, what kind of tools I use in order to create this podcast.
They would be great, Akmal. Like if you can like tell us like what kind of gadgets do you have, because there are lots of questions like people asking like, hey, can you give us details, how we can create podcasts, what kind of technology we can use, right? Like if you can just take us through the creation of one podcast, like where you get images, the content, and what kind of technology you use, that would be really great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so in order to host my podcasts, I use this website called podbean.com. So actually, there are a lot of platforms on the internet, but I decided to use this one because it was much easier to use. It was very easy to understand, easy to upload my podcasts, and in order to host my podcasts every month, I pay some money, and this money is not a lot. It's for 1 month, it's $5. Actually it was $9, but I wrote to Podbean administration and I said, I'm a teacher of English and I'm not doing it for commercial purposes. So maybe
Smart move. Smart move, sir.
Yeah, and I said maybe you can give me some kind of discount, and they said okay, no problem. We can make it $5 for you every month. You just pay $5. So I just pay $5. But okay, so what do I get for $5? For $5, I get this website which you can see now. You see, this everything that you can see over here. I didn't create myself. It was all created. So this is like a ready template, shablon, and they have all of these statistics. They can, so I have 32 podcast episodes and they have been downloaded more than 14,000 times. And of course, when I enter inside, I can see when I enter when I enter the admin dashboard, I can see the whole statistics. Yeah. So from which countries people are logging in and trying to download the podcast, and etc. etc. So everything is ready there. Everything is prepared. So this is Podbean. Here. Yeah. Okay. So 1 minute. Let me do like this. Yeah. So this is the platform. This is what it looks like inside. So there are so far I was able to attract 426 followers, or let's say listeners. Okay. So here, in the middle of our webinar, Ulugbek, you asked me whether I could add anything. So, the main, the teachers can find a lot of podcasts from here as well. You see, there are different kinds of topics. So all they have to do is just go to Podbean and browse podcasts here. Comedy, education, music, science, technology, true crime, news, So usually when I listen, I listen to some of the podcasts in education and business sections. So I'm maybe sometimes technology, but usually business and education. Okay, so now if you listen to my podcasts, there was some kind of a music at the beginning, right? And there's also music in the end. So where you can find such kind of music, pieces of music, you can find them on this website. 1 minute, I'll show you now. Yeah. You see? So you can find this music, which, you know, like, of course, you don't have to use the music at the beginning of your podcast, but if you want to be like professional, if you want to make it more professional, of course, it's better to start with some kind of an intro music, you know, like and then your voice is coming, and then you're starting the show, you know. It makes your podcast more interesting and more professional. And so where you can find them, you can find them here, you know. So all you have to do is click on this yellow round buttons and check whether they fit your the podcast topic or not. And if they do fit, so all you have to do is, okay, just click here, for example, yeah. 1 minute. Internet is not very fast. Okay, so now, in order to download it, all you have to do is just to click here. You see this red big button, free download MP3s. You just click here, and it will, you know, it will be downloaded into your computer. But in order to be safe, if you don't want to break any copyright rules and regulations, so here the person who created this intro music, they gave you, they are giving the license. So all you have to do is just to copy this and put it under your website, under your podcast on your website. So when you do that, you will be safe, and you will be, you will be clean. Yeah, you will be okay. So from here you can find the intro pieces of music. Okay. Now, if you want to, how you can add this music and your audio material, right? So what kind of tool I use? I use 1 minute. It's okay. That tool is called Audacity. 1 minute. Okay, so here you see this is the logo. Okay, this is the tool that I use. It's called Audacity. All right. It looks a little bit scary. You see, this is how it looks like. It looks a little bit scary, but this is one of the best audio editing tools on the internet. It's the best. It's the best, and it's free. Okay. You see, it's.
Akmal, can I add something?
Uh-huh.
You know, just as you said, Audacity is one of the the best and most popular and free resources on the internet. Just to let you know that in the United States also, Audacity has been used by many researchers and students and professionals. Like when I took my PhD level pronunciation course, our teachers asked us to do a number of assignments using Audacity. So in other words, Audacity is very popular and a lot of people use it, and it's free and it's good, right, Akmal?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a little bit complicated program to use because it has a lot of features. It has a lot of features because it's a very advanced tool, So, but you don't worry, okay? Like in order to create my own podcasts, I'm not like a highly professional user of this Audacity program. And if I use this program, I know like maybe like 10% of its features. I know how to use 10% of its features. So as you can see, I'm also like, I'm almost beginner. Yeah, it means like I can say that I almost don't know how to use Audacity very well. But so how did I learn? If you go to YouTube and search like how to use Audacity to create podcasts, how to use Audacity to do this, like to add the music to my audio material, or to add the background music to my audio material, and blah 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 blah. You know, there are millions video lessons on YouTube. So there are a lot of materials, video tutorials on YouTube. So all you have to do is just watch every video tutorial with patience, and you know, the follow the steps, and do everything patiently, you know. So usually what I do, you know, usually what happens when I want to create something, recently I created online course. And so, you know, how did I do that? I went to YouTube, and there was a 1 hour video. There was a 1 hour video on how to create an online course. And in that 1 hour video, the guy showed how to create an online course. And, you know, I was like, oh my God, this is 1 hour. I'm not going to watch it. And no, this is too much. And then the next day I came back and I said, okay, no matter how many hours it will take me today, I will just patiently sit and watch and follow every single step. I will be patient, and I will not cry. And no matter how painful it is, I will just watch this video and follow every single step. And I watched and I followed every single step, and I created my online course. And now these days I'm teaching online. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want to create something, there are a lot of such tutorials on YouTube, millions and millions, you know. And the good news is they're all free. They're all free. But many people, they just watch it like for fun, you know, like just for entertainment. Yeah. Even if it's a 1 hour video, or even if it's 30-minute or the 10-minute video, if you want to learn how to use some kind of tool or instrument, my best advice is just you know, watch it. And if you know, these tutorials, they usually ask they have a call to action. They teach you how to use something, how to do something. So that's why when you're watching it, you should be prepared for the action as well, and you should be prepared to pause and take the action, and then continue watching, pause, take action, and continue watching, you know. So the same thing I did with the Audacity, you know. All I did, you know, nobody taught me, and I didn't take any special course. What I did, I just downloaded Audacity on my website, on my computer, and you know, after that, I just didn't know how to use it. Yeah, I was scared. I wanted even to to delete it, but I said, no, come on, let's check how it works. And I went to YouTube and watched all the tutorials one by one, you know, with the patience, and step by step, it was successful. And when you see your success, you will be happy. Even when it's very small success, you will be happy and you will be motivated. So every time when I was successful, when I saw the result of my work, I was happy, and I was slowly, I did everything like that. And you know, one more thing I wanted to tell you. Where is it? This kind of, you see this here. I hope you can see it, right? Yeah, you can see it. This is the cover of the newsletter. Yeah, so So maybe you are wondering how I did that. And again, this is not that very difficult, and anybody in this classroom can do it. And so what kind of tool I used for it, and here, 1 minute, where is it? I wanted to show you this one as well. You see here, I have a nice like a background here, like listen, read, listen, learn, and grow. And here for every podcast, I have posters, right? So, why it's not moving? Okay, you see, speaking, this kind of this posters, yeah. So how you can create this kind of posters? Yeah, very easy. Don't worry. I'm gonna show you now. There is a tool called Canva. So canva.com.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love Canva.
So actually, there are many tools, and the Canva is the one that I use. I have been using, like, I can say, almost 10 years now.
Most of my colleagues in the US also use Canva, and they love it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is very nice. The Canva is very nice, and it's most importantly, it's free. It's free, and so basically there's everything. There's everything. You see. So all I did now, over here in the corner, you see there are templates. If you click on the templates, there is a supermarket of content materials that you can create. Lesson plans, worksheets, certificates, and newsletter. You see, this is what I chose, newsletter. So all you have to do is click on this link, newsletter, and you see here, you see this small picture, and you get that ready-made newsletter, and all you have to do is just to type your text, play with the fonts, play with the design, and if you have your own logo, you can put your logo, or you can, if you want to put your name, you can put your name, yeah, and present to your students more professional material, professionally made material. And there are two things that I want to show you as well. If you need pictures with like sometimes when you're creating content, you also need pictures with no background. So where do you get that kind of background? So this is very easy. So all you have to do is just go to Clean PNG website. Here, so, and you just type here. So for example, what kind of picture you want to use for your podcast material, yeah, or for your newsletter, or for the material you want to create. For example, you want to find a picture of a student who's reading a book. So you just write reading a book, click enter, and you have these pictures. Okay, where? Okay, now let's see this one. Okay, not the best one. Okay, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. All right, so now you see this. Now this picture, yeah, you can use this picture for your podcast material. And the why this picture is because you see the background. Background is transparent. It's not white. It means you can download this you can download this picture and use it with any kind of background, you know. You see here, now this behind, it looks white. Actually, it's not white, it's transparent. So if you download it and put it on a green background, it will look fine. If you put it on a black, it will look fine, you know. So these are the materials that I use in order to create my own podcasts so far, you know. So, and if anybody has any questions, of course, I will be very happy to respond and answer the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Akmal. So I think we'll get back to the questions. You know, some people were actually asking questions as well. I responded to some of them. Like, if you can stop sharing your screen, I will go ahead and share mine.
Yeah.
So I think, just a second. So, you know, a couple of people like Mal asked, like, you know, questions and about like how they can use podcasts. And I think you responded to most of them. And so if we have questions at the end, we can always like talk about it. I think, you know, it's like 8:14 now. So I think looks like you have to do another session. Akmal?
Oh. Okay.
On podcasting. So now here's the thing, right? Akmal talked about podcasts, right? And you know how he actually developed his podcast. As you can see, like top podcasts vary, right? Like at times, Akmal, you did an interview, right? At other times, you basically wanted to support your own materials, want to integrate something into your teaching, and you created those materials, right? And sometimes you actually had a book, right, that you used and created podcasts around that book material, right? In fact, you know, somebody from the chat, I think her name is Nilufar Opa. I think she's also interested in creating her own podcast around the material that she really likes, the book by Redman and McCarthy, I think. So, right, I mean, she has a ready-made material, but she just want to integrate the podcast component into that. And Halimapa was also talking about it. Now, here's the thing. Some people also mentioned, like, I think Sevarapa and other people that, you know, during the quarantine, during the lockdown, they want to listen to their podcast, right? Or that are general made podcasts and they want to listen to these podcasts. But here's the thing. Some of you might be wondering, how much vocabulary do your learners need to know to understand podcasts? So my colleague Shazia Shorahimov and I actually did a study on podcasting. What we wanted to do was basically, we wanted to examine the number of words the learners need to know to understand or comprehend the podcast. So one thing we did was that, so we just wanted to know how much vocabulary do learners need to know to understand general audience podcasts. Remember, right? General audience podcasts are the type of podcasts designed for native speakers in mind, or advanced learners, right? So here's what happened. So what we did was that some of you are looking for podcasts, right? To listen during quarantine. So what we did with Shazas was that we collected the transcripts of the following podcasts. Free Economics. If you're interested in economics, finance, please listen to this podcast. But TED Radio Hour podcast, Fresh Air, This American Life, Hidden Brain. If you're interested in psychology, please, take a look at Hidden Brain. Or Today Explained, where they cover lots of news. If you're interested in psychology, Invisibility is your podcast. Or How I Build This. Right, for example, Duolingo podcast, Duolingo company, right? If you're interested in the creation of Duolingo company, take a look, listen to this podcast. So one of the reasons we chose these podcasts were this: first of all, they're very popular. A lot of people listen to it. Do you remember Akmal pointed out, how many downloads were made or how many subscribers used to listen to his podcast? Similarly, these podcasts designed for general audience have lots of subscribers. Have been downloaded many times. So, so when you get this PPT, if you click on this, you see I hyperlinked the website to this podcast. So we looked at the transcripts. They often offered free transcripts. So we collected about 170 episodes of transcripts of this podcast to create our corpus. And in total, it was like 113 hours of podcast episodes that we collected. And our corpus size was a bit over 1 million words, right? And we did some analysis, and our analysis showed that your learners need to know about 3,000 word families, including marginal words, transparent compounds, abbreviations, and other words, to have an adequate comprehension of a podcast. Agar o'quvchilar yoki o'zinglar podcastni yaxshi tushunmoqchi bo'lsanglar, 3000 ta so'z o'sha word familiesni bilishinglar kerak. 95% degani, misol uchun 100 ta so'z bo'ladigan bo'lsa, bitta tekstda, to'g'rimi? Bitta podcastda 100 ta so'z bo'ladigan bo'lsa, o'shani 95 tasini bilsanglar, 3000 ta so'z bilsanglar, ana o'sha podcastdagi 95 ta so'zni bilasizlar. Demak, 95 ta so'zni bildim degani, podcastni yaxshi tushundim degani. If you want to have a really good comprehension, high-level comprehension, listening comprehension, you need to know about 5,000 word families, and including marginal words, right, abbreviations, to have a high listening comprehension. So you need to know about 98% of the words in the podcast episode. Agar o'sha podcastni zo'r tushunmoqchi bo'lsanglar, hamma detallarigacha bilmoqchi bo'lsanglar, demak, o'sha podcast epizodidagi 98% so'zni bilishinglar kerak. Misol uchun 100 ta so'z bo'ladigan bo'lsa bitta podcastda, o'shandan 98 tasini bilishinglar kerak. 98 tasini bilish uchun 5000 ta so'z oilasini bilishinglar kerak bo'ladi. You got it? So in other words, before you select a podcast to integrate, before you integrate your teaching, you need to make sure that your students know a lot of words. Or if you really want to enjoy listening to podcasts, you need to make sure that you know a lot of words, okay? So, that's what we wanted to find out with Shaz's. And now, you remember, we actually, looked at a number of different podcasts, right? We had Fresh Air, Hidden Brain, How I Build This. Now, look at it. Most of the podcasts, as you can see, require about 3,000 to 5,000 word families. But now look at this. How I Build These Podcasts requires around 2,000 and 4,000 word families. In other words, it's less than, other types of podcasts. So what I wanted to say, maybe if you really want to start listening to podcasts, maybe you want to start listening with Akmal's podcast, because you know that Akmal created these, with his learners in mind, right? Investstudy.com podcast. And after that, maybe How I Build This Podcast might be useful, might be beneficial for you and your learners. Why? Because it requires a fewer numbers of words. Agar misol uchun podcastni kirgizmoqchi bo'lsanglar materialiga, unaqada How I Build This manimcha foydalansanglar yaxshiroq bo'lsa kerak. So that's what I want actually to tell you guys. So implications for research. Now, if you really want to start listening to podcasts, then please pay attention to the knowledge of the first 3 most frequently used words, okay? Like first 3 1,000 most frequently used words. To'g'rimi? Birinchi 1 mingtalik, ikkinchi 2 mingtalik, uchinchi 1 mingtalik so'zlarni o'quvchilar biladimi o'zi? Shunga e'tibor berishinglar kerak. And to learn more about this, so you can click it. I don't want to go into details. After the presentation is over, you can actually find out about this. Or if you really wanted to test whether your learners know this, the most frequently used 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 most frequently used words, then maybe you want to administer this test called vocabulary levels test. And it's also for free, and check it out after the presentation is over. Or some of you might be wondering how I can incorporate podcasts into my teaching. Maybe you can create a listening log, right? So you can choose a podcast episode, and you can have your students listen to a podcast and fill out a form, which basically looks like this. So just to let you know that we put together all these materials on our Google Drive, including Akmal's Invest Study podcast sample. So maybe it can look something like this. Where was this? Is it here? Yes. So it's oops, sorry, it's here. So right. So basically, you give these you give this form to your learners, right? And the learners have to listen to one podcast episode, right? And they have to integrate a podcast name, time spent on listening, what was the name of the episode, and they can give a link, and you can have your students summarize the podcast they listened to, right? And if they encountered some new words, maybe you can have them write down the words and the definitions, using a dictionary and other things they've learned from the podcast, right? I mean, it's just one idea, okay? So it's just the one idea out of many. Yeah, so yeah, this is what you can do. And and somebody, I think it was Sevarapa or a couple of other people mentioned that, asked what kind of podcast we can recommend. Akmal and I thought about it, and I asked Akmal what kind of podcast he listens to, and we basically put together these 7. Okay, so I mean the first 5 are my favorite podcast episodes. So Vanishing Words by Radiolab. Remember, right? There is a podcast, there's a company, and their products, right? Like Vanishing Words, a podcast episode by Radiolab. Hard Words is a podcast episode by APM Reports, right? Misal uchun How I Build This degan podcast borda. Uni bitta yaxshi men yaxshi ko'rgan epizodim Duolingoni yaratgan odam bilan suhbat bo'ladi. Lekin podcast oti How I Build This. And if you're really interested in vocabulary, or there is this podcast called Teflology Podcast. I love it. And 2 episodes I love the most by Paul Nation and Batia Laffer. So if you're interested in vocabulary, you might have recognized these people. Now, here's the thing. Akmal also recommended these 2 podcasts. I think it was Real English Conversations. So let me correct this. Right, Akmal? So Real English Conversations, right? And another one is Lit to Win. So, these are, I didn't put episode names. We just decided to put oh, I put never mind. Let me just correct it right away. Otherwise, we will not have time, right? So these are the types of podcasts, you guys can listen to until August 1st. And I think, Akmal, we can then later quiz them, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and here's the tiny URL link where you can, you have access to our PPT and related handouts. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Akmal, do you have to teach now, or do you have some time?
I have a class at 7 o'clock, but if people have questions, I will be happy to answer you.
Sounds good. So if people have questions, please go ahead and ask. So we can probably get a couple of questions. Then we can call it a day. So any questions? You can also look at the, Akmal, you can also look at the chat in case.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? If you don't have questions, we can call it a day. Or call it evening if you're in Tashkent or Uzbekistan.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think, how they can contact you, Akmal?
They can find me from Telegram. No problem. I can share my contact.
Yeah. Are you in our mental hub?
Yes, I am. Yes.
So I'll tag him, and then you can write to him. Okay. Yeah, great. I think people need time to process all the information. It was because I think it was packed with lots of information, and they will probably need to re-watch the video, right? And as you said, try to follow the instructions and do, right? So that's the only way we learn how to do something. Yes. Where are you now? I guess Akmal. Yeah, Akmal lives in Uzbekistan, right?
Yeah, I'm in Tashkent now.
Still. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for agreeing to do this. Thank you for all your efforts and your commitment to the development of English language teaching in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nodrupa. Yeah. Thank you for all the attendees. Akmal,
I have a good wish. We know that all podcasts are made by Bana country people, yes? Mr. Muhammad, living in America. But you are Uzbek, Akmal in Uzbek, Nadira. Also, Uzbek can make the products competitive to their countries' teachers. Therefore, it will be very interesting to be involved in one project. That is project of TESOL, 6 online training. Maybe I will choose this. And Akmal, you as a really moderator, if you agree, could you post your telephone number, how to reach you, okay?
Okay, all right.
Good. How to reach you, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, stay tuned for our next webinars. We have very exciting webinar coming on Wednesday with Christopher Ford. So it would be like a forum. He's the translator of Keçeva Kunduz by Chulpan and Baqi Dar Badarlar, but by, what was it? Sorry, I forgot. Issa John Sultan. Yes, so it will be really exciting with forum. Kind of, yes, stay tuned. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.